Hey everybody, how you doing? I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and I'm here with my good friend Miss Susan Patton, aka the Princeton Mom. How you doing today, Susan?
Very well, boys. You?
I'm doing really well.
Good,
I'm doing really well.
good.
You and I were talking today about Planned Parenthood and their endorsement of Hillary Clinton and the controversial nature of Planned Parenthood and kind of how they came to be and how they operate and
Right.
stuff like that and how they impact the black community. Can you tell me some of your initial thoughts on this on the Planned Parenthood thing?
All right. I hate Planned Parenthood. I think Planned Parenthood is an abortion machine. I think that they are promoting something that's just so hateful and so hideous. Look, I stand with the rights of the unborn. I always have. This is who I am. But very recently, this week, somebody, a black friend of mine, told me or said to me, asked me whether I was aware of the origins of Planned Parenthood. It was started back in 1921, and it's always had a racist agenda. Planned Parenthood started out of a need to reduce the number of black babies being born. I thought,
Hmm.
oh my God, doesn't that make perfect sense? I don't know that I've ever heard it before, but I completely believe it. And I did a little research. It seems that this is quite true, that Planned Parenthood came about as means by which to reduce the black population at birth, before birth.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking, why does the black community embrace Hillary Clinton, who I do not like not one bit, considering that she is supported and encouraged and endorsed by groups like Planned Parenthood that very clearly have a racist agenda. So I don't like Planned Parenthood. I don't like anything about it. I don't like Hillary Clinton. Don't like anything about her. Now you tell me what you think.
Well, I think you're talking about Margaret Sanger, right? Wasn't
Yeah,
wasn't she the founder?
yeah,
And I was sitting here with my trusty cell phone, and I was trying to gather up some of her more interesting quotes about black people. And my argument has always been that black people should be informed, that
right,
we should just question everything,
right.
and that includes questioning your motivation for telling black people that we should walk away from Hillary Clinton, right? Because the question at that point is, okay, we should walk away from Hillary, but walk toward what? Or
Such a good
and
question.
that
I don't
right.
have an answer. And I thought about that this morning when thinking about, thinking about having this conversation with you. I'm thinking, well, if I were a black person, who would I be? Who would I vote for? And the answer is there's nobody. Frankly, there is nobody there that's looking out for your interests, Boyce. You know that. Nobody. And in fact, there probably hasn't been since Abraham Lincoln.
Mm.
It's a very sad reality. You have to vote for the least of all evils here. And I'm not sure that Hillary Clinton is that least of all evils. I think she's pretty evil, and I think Planned Parenthood, in many regards, is pretty evil. And as much as Planned Parenthood tries to put itself forward as all about women's health, nonsense. You know that's not what it's about. You know
Well,
that's they're sanitizing it by saying it's about women's health, but it's not. It's about abortion, which they're trying to make it seem like abortion is no different than having your teeth cleaned. It's
mm.
very different than having your teeth cleaned. And I don't think that it's appropriate for uh, anybody to believe that Planned Parenthood is all about women's health. It's not about women's health. It just isn't. There are a million other avenues towards women's health that are not inclusive of Planned Parenthood's agenda, which is genocide and which started as genocide of black people.
Well, couldn't this be laid out as a a spiritual question, right? In China, there's no issue with abortion, there's no issue with stem cell research or anything because they're sort of like, look, if you're not born, you don't really exist. China's always had the one child policy that says, for a lot of people, if you if you get pregnant a second time, we're going to go ahead and push forward with the abortion. It almost seems that it does become a spiritual question, and I'm not saying that you're wrong or right on this. I mean, I personally tend to lean in favor of what you're saying in the sense that it doesn't surprise me if Sanger had an issue with black people because at that time it seemed that everybody didn't like everyone had an issue with black people. Everyone kind of thought
Do
black
those.
black
They
black.
still do. There's an enormous population that still has an issue with black people. But
Right,
okay,
right, 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 and right,
let's in January.
right. So if you go back to the 1920s, you just take what we have now and multiply it by 5 or 10, and that's that's the interesting thing is that I think that if you're going to question everything in history based on their perception of race, we're going to have a whole lot of people we're going to have to judge, including you and I were talking about Woodrow Wilson for among many, right?
Right.
Now that does not let Sanger off the hook, though. That does not let Planned Parenthood off the hook. It almost seems to me that over time, Planned Parenthood's marketing of themselves as being, advocates for women's health and women's rights has resonated to the point where you have people who believe in Planned Parenthood, but maybe not for the reasons that Margaret Sanger might have believed in Planned Parenthood, right? You see what I mean?
Oh no,
It's so
absolutely,
right.
absolutely.
So I know for example, my goddaughter is a big fan of Planned Parenthood, but I know she went to Columbia, which is a very liberal school, and or Barnard, the women's side of Columbia, and I remember I went to see the commencement speech, and I was stunned at how political the president made her commencement speech. She said down in Texas they're trying to take away a woman's right to choose, and things like that. And I thought this is kind of strange to hear this at a commencement where you've got people from different backgrounds. In fact, my goddaughter's mom was Catholic, and I don't think she believed in abortion. We didn't really talk about it, but
Yeah.
it's just kind of so I would say that that this sort of interesting, nasty, crazy war that you white people have been having with each other over these liberal and conservative issues for hundreds of years before black people were invited into the fold. It's interesting because as a black person personally, I feel like people are trying to kidnap me and pull me in to support their agenda. They're here to say,
Very much so.
we've had this war, this war between men and women, this war between liberals and conservatives that's been going on, since you guys were slaves. But now we need you to join our agenda. So
That's right.
what we're gonna do, and so it's almost like you can imagine a liberal and a conservative in a room with a black person in the middle, and the liberal saying the conservative hates you, they're racist, and the conservative saying, well, look at how bad they treat you, look at what
That's
they do,
exactly right.
and the black
That's
person's
exactly
like,
right.
which one? What do I do? Which side do I join? And I tell people, pick, become sovereign, sort of come to your own conclusions about these things. So I think
Exactly
Planned
right.
Parenthood can be questioned, absolutely.
Exactly right. What you're saying, and you articulated it better than I did. There's such large scale pandering going on here. Each of the political parties they want the black vote. They
Mhm.
also want the Jewish vote, and they're willing to say absolutely anything to get it. And in the same way, they're pandering to the black community. I mean, Hillary Clinton, holy mackerel. I hope that our viewers see through this for what it is. Hillary is no friend to the black community whatsoever. But I was listening the other night with my son. We were watching maybe the debate last week, and every candidate is saying, and I am the best friend of Israel, and I will always be committed to Israel, and Israel's. I'm thinking, holy mackerel, could I be pandered to any more than this? I'm sure that many of these candidates are not particularly fond of Jewish people, but they're saying they are. Many of these candidates, they don't know which end of the bowl the matzah comes from, but they are all about Israel. They are the best friend of Israel. They will defend Israel's rights first, last, and come on. We as an electorate have to be smarter than to fall prey to this kind of pandering.
Mm.
Pandering. And maybe part of that answer is we should stop looking at which candidate is going to be best for us. Because, I mean, I said it before, and I think it's true. The black community, you don't have a good candidate. There's no good candidate. There's nobody that's going to be good for you, and you know it. Does the Jewish community have a good candidate? My dad, he should rest in peace, he passed away 13 years ago, was a one-issue voter. And he always voted. Whoever was good for Israel got my dad's vote. That's it. He was a one-issue voter. I'm not quite a one-issue voter, but the survival of Israel certainly matters to me, being the child of two survivors of concentration camps. It certainly matters to me. But I'm wondering whether, we're supposed to look outside of our own interests and think which candidate could do best for the country.
Mm-hmm.
We have to maybe the way we measure a candidate shouldn't be quite so personal of who's going to be best for me. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think human beings are inherently self-interested. I think people
Great.
naturally support their own issue, and they think that what they care about is the most important thing in the world. And I think you're right that, most candidates have multiple dimensions of who they are, and it becomes kind of tough. I think that a black person can easily justify supporting Hillary Clinton because I don't think
On what?
lesser of two evils basically. I don't think that many black voters feel that the Republican candidates are going to do justice by black people. And I think they could probably gain some ground by kind of becoming a little more open-minded about criminal problems in the criminal justice system. Stop believing that America is wonderful the way it is, and accept the idea that some things have to be improved. But then maybe they'd lose some of their base if they did that. I don't know.
See, but it's the Republican platform that's saying America needs to improve. We need to be better. We need to restore our greatness. We need to do stuff differently. Whereas the Democrats are looking to basically further Obama.
Right. Well, that's the thing. The Republicans perceive the Obama presidency as a complete failure, as sort of America at its worst, and there are people who see the Obama presidency as an American dream fulfilled. And that becomes the interesting thing when Trump says "Make America Great Again." He's really kind of saying "Take our country back," and that means take it back from them. Who's them? Them is us, right? And I think that becomes kind of the language.
When you say "them is us," you mean
them is us, basically black people. Yeah, I mean, because the thing
what
is
there to take back? What do you have that we could take back?
The
What
White
do you
House.
have that we could take back?
The White House. The
Well,
Obama family in
there's
the
not
White
going to be
House.
another black person in the White House next
Well,
year.
there's not going to be another black person in the White House, but I think that to the extent that Hillary Clinton is a continuation of what Obama started, I think that there are Republicans who are going to resent that. But I want to go back to the point you made about Planned Parenthood, endorsing Hillary and just kind of this racial undertone. Because I have to tell you a story about this. When I was in South Africa, I noticed that when I went to the white parts of town, I saw no advertisements for abortions. But when I went to the black side of town, there were so many abortion ads that you couldn't see the end of the trail. There would be literally these pieces of paper. You know how they take the paper and they cut it in little pieces where you can pull off the number? They would have just page, like hundreds of them lined up on every block. And I said, okay, this is an agenda. There's a population control agenda, very blatant population control agenda here. And so I imagine in America, we've always been just a less blatant version of what South Africa does. We may not come out and clearly say or show exactly what the government's trying to do, but there's been a lot of evidence to say that a lot of what happened in South Africa happens here as well. In fact, in South Africa, they didn't kill Nelson Mandela. They just put him in prison, which allowed him to remain dangerous. In America, they just killed Dr. Martin Luther King. The government was like, we just want him gone, and his family proved that in court. So, and also, we've actually, I don't know if you know this, but we've actually incarcerated more black men in America than South Africa did during the height of apartheid. So ultimately,
and under whose administration was that approved?
Well, that's the thing. It was multiple administrations. Clinton made it worse. Clinton came in with the three strikes laws, which just was the hammer, and the nail in the coffin. But actually, if you go back to Reagan in the war on drugs, when Nancy Reagan was saying just say no, and Ronald was saying let's declare war on drugs, while at the same time they're doing these back dealings with the CIA and the Iran-Contra situation, which was letting more drugs into the country. That just sort of, to me, represents a pattern of betrayals, against black people over time. Going back to J. Edgar Hoover and some of the dirty things that they later on were unearthed that he did to kind of undermine the Malcolm X's and the Black Panthers and things like that. But you're right though. Clinton is part of that, and to some extent, Obama didn't do enough to erase that either. So
to erase it. Don't say he didn't do enough.
Well, you know what, Obama
call it like it is. He didn't do anything for it.
Yeah. Well, we can't say he didn't do anything because mind you, I'm seen as a person. Some people see me as an Obama critic, but what they don't understand is that I was one of the first people to endorse him before other black people endorsed him. I'm not a bandwagon person. I just think that that's silly. So anyway, with Obama, I've never liked him or disliked him, but I always look at situations and say, okay, he could have did more, but he also could have done less. So with incarceration, here's what he did do. He was the first sitting president to go visit an American prison. Now, I think it was I don't know if it was maximum or minimum security, but he visited a prison, which to me did say something about highlighting the imbalances that exist in the prison system. Now, of course, that's not the same as signing an actual bill or things like that. And he did sign some of those, but you have to give him credit for that. because he could have stayed home. He could have said, "I'm not even," because I don't think that a Republican president would try to create any sort of public sympathy for what is happening in prisons. And that becomes a big part of the divide between black people I know and the Republican Party is that, the people that they look at and say, well, they're criminals. Of course, they deserve whatever they get. They have no human rights. If you go to prison and you get raped and beaten, then that's on you. But for many of us, these are our relatives. These are people in our family that we see who made a mistake, a nonviolent crime, possessed some drugs, or you know what I mean, or broke the law a couple times.
Oh, I understand.
So we look at that and say, okay, why can't we do what other countries do and rehabilitate inmates as opposed to try to ruin them and make them worse, and then you dump them off in the same neighborhoods they came from, where they're even worse than they were before. Now they really are dangerous people.
But that is what our correctional institutions are supposed to do, to rehabilitate. In fact, they're called correctional institutions. They're not called penitentiaries anymore. People aren't sent there to do penance. They're not sent there for punishment. They're sent there for correction. And while, okay, good that President Obama, took 15 minutes out of the schedule to go visit a prison, better he actually did something to improve the prison problem beyond just the photo op of 15 minutes, visiting a prison.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't think a President Trump would do anything to help with that problem. I think Trump, because remember, Trump also actually pushed out a petition and got over 100,000 signatures to send the Central Park Five to prison when they were accused of raping the white woman in Central Park because there was so much outrage. This is a historical thing. Whenever a black man has been accused of harming a white woman, there's this sort of mass of rage that can develop in the white community where a lot of people end up paying the price for that. And so the Central,
you mean like OJ?
Yeah, the OJ trial, the Black Wall Street massacre, where a black man was accused of touching a white woman, and they burned down the whole black side of town. And these were wealthy black people, and the list goes on and on. And so in the Central Park Five situation, where these kids were later on found to be innocent, Trump worked really, really hard to send them away. He didn't want them sent to prison. He wanted them executed. That's what it was. And years later, it was determined that the police coerced these poor kids to the point where they eventually were tricked into confessing to crimes they didn't commit. They were all sent away to prison, and then later on, the government had to pay because they sent the wrong people to prison. So again, it doesn't. But the thing about it is, there's always this tough balance, right? Because we want safe streets, we want a safe society, we want people. We don't want people victimizing other people and not being forced to pay a price for that. So that's where I step in and I become someone that a lot of black people don't want to listen to, in that I say, look, we have to understand that a lot of the people who support these policies that are not healthy, I think they really are trying to be good people. They really think they're doing the right thing because, if you believe in protecting your loved ones, yeah, of course you want someone who commits a crime to be punished for what they did. The problem is that in many cases we get the wrong person, or we'll grab the black person and throw away the key and nobody cares about that. That's the issue.
And that's a huge problem. I don't think that, and I'm sure there are some, but I don't think in most cases the thinking is, well, this is a black potential perpetrator. Forget the facts. Let's just skin them. Let's just kill them. I don't think that's the case. But maybe what you're saying, I think what you're saying is that if there's a black man that's accused, there's not a whole lot of effort put towards getting to the bottom of it, because we're happy enough to say, oh, here's another bad black guy. Let's just put him away. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, a lot of times I think there's a perception that says that black life, the reason that Black Lives Matter is an important term is because there are people who perceive black life to be less valuable. So if we take a kid who might be innocent, might be guilty, and we send him to prison for 40 years, nobody really, the judges and jurors who are not jurors of their peers don't tend to think about the implications of that. What about his family? What about his children? What about his community? They're just thinking, well, yeah, okay, well, he's gone away, and let's just get rid of him before he does anything else. If he didn't do this, he probably did something else. So it's no big deal. But there's a lot more sympathy when whites go through something similar. For example, just look at the way the heroin epidemic is perceived today versus the way it was perceived in the 70s when it affected mostly black people. Back then, if you were on heroin, you were thrown in jail. There wasn't any sort of like, oh, let's feel sorry. Let's give them a safe space where they can go get high.
I don't know that. Is that true? Is that really true?
What,
in the 70s?
Absolutely.
If you were heroin addicted, you were picked up and
Well,
put away.
for possession, because basically, if you can't afford lawyers and all that, you're going to be in jail for a while. So heroin possession, distribution, all these things were treated and perceived differently. When it affected mostly black people than say today, or even crack as well. It was perceived differently when it affected black people. But now that you've got, the Rush Limbaughs getting addicted to opiates.
Right, right,
You've
right.
got white kids, all over the place getting addicted to this stuff. Now they've created. I think in Boston they have this nice, safe, warm space where you can go and use your heroin safely. And there's kind of this sort of understanding of this addiction. But it is interesting though that. I don't think the addiction is going to stop because I think now you've got these corporations making money by getting people on these opiates, and it's an absolute mess. I don't know which was worse, when the drug dealers were criminals, or when the drug dealers became corporations. It's going to get real bad.
It's probably worse that the drug dealers are now corporations because they have the money to market it big time. It's not corner transactions. They have the wherewithal to market this on a wholesale basis. So yeah, it's a little bit terrifying. It's a little bit terrifying.
Yeah.
Who are you going to vote for?
I don't know.
Who are you going to vote for?
I don't know. I'm thinking about. It's a toss up between Abraham Lincoln and Donald Duck. I don't know. It's
Abraham Lincoln and Donald Trump.
No, not Donald Trump. Donald Duck. No, in all seriousness, I'm not voting.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know who to vote for. I look at Donald Trump and I think he there's a possibility he could be a totally kick-ass president. There's a possibility he could actually get in there in his completely non-politically correct way and just blow through the place, get stuff done that we haven't gotten done in decades, not in generations. And then there's another part of me that the thought of saying President Trump makes me throw up in my mouth a little bit. So, it's a dilemma. I'm completely not voting for Hillary Clinton under no circumstance. If I ever did, it's because there would be a gun held to my head, because there's no other way I would do so. But wow, I don't know. I don't know. And Ted Cruz, I want to love Ted Cruz. He's a Princeton guy. And what do I love more than Princeton? Nothing. My dog. But nothing. I can't vote Cruz. I can't vote for him. I can't bring myself to do it. And I can't even put a finger on what it is about him that is so thoroughly unlikable. But man, is he unlikable. I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you. I would. I'm not voting for a Democrat or a Republican. That's for sure. You're not going to lock me into making one bad choice or the other. I'm just not interested in that. In fact, it's funny. You know what it makes me think about? It makes me think about why I don't go on shows like the O'Reilly Factor, because what they'll do is they'll try to lock you into a yes or no question.
Sure.
And either answer is going to make you look bad. And when I see that coming, I say I'm not answering that question.
And that's okay too. And that's okay too. Although, there are very few questions where, really, what won't you answer? I remember a couple of weeks ago I asked you flat out, Boyce, am I a racist?
Right, and that question, I think in that one I ended up saying yes, but I got to explain. But however, if let's say that you didn't let me explain. Let's say that you did what these talk show hosts do, where you take my answer and then you go to a commercial break. Then I would say, you know what, I'm not going to answer that question in a yes or no fashion. That's not a yes or no question. It's like saying you gave me a size 8 shoe and I have a size 13 foot. Ain't gonna happen. I'm not answering that question. Right. I was on Sean Hannity's radio show just one time, and we had that issue. It got very combative, and he said, "Sir, I asked the questions on my show." I said, "No, I'm gonna ask you a question. If you ask me a dumb question, I'm gonna come right back at you with a question because your questions aren't making any sense." So,
and you're entitled to do that. You're entitled to do that. This is a free society. You don't have to answer anything, or what I see the politicians are doing constantly is they're asked one question, but they answer a completely different question. Mm-hmm. A completely different question. Well, I think they call that pivoting.
Yeah. They have, that's a media strategy, right?
It's a strategy, and it's a smart strategy.
Right. You have your talking points, and then you whatever the question is, you address it maybe in the first sentence. That is a very important issue. However, what's really important is then you go into your speech.
Right.
That's,
Right.
I love
That
that.
makes me insane. I also couldn't stand, was it last week? And this election cycle has been so long. When Jorge Ramos asked Hillary Clinton, if you're indicted, will you withdraw your candidacy? All right, now I thought that was a pretty good question because it was a direct, it really requires nothing more than a yes or no answer. And it's an important question. And it's a question that could very literally raise its head during the course of this process. And her answer was, God, I hated her answer. Her answer was, well, that's just never going to happen, so I'm not even going to answer it. And I thought, oh, God, I couldn't hate her anymore. I couldn't any more than I do. Because if, in fact, she is indicted, which she may very well be.
Well, you think she'll be indicted over Benghazi, or you think it's something else?
I think that actually, well, it could be Benghazi, it could be the emails, but I don't think either one of those things. I think she's going to be indicted over some kind of malfeasance having to do with the Clinton Foundation.
That Hillary Clinton scandal. Okay.
There is so much Clinton schmutz. So much Clinton schmutz, I don't even know where to begin. And the thought that we are possibly putting our line for 4 more years of this disgusting Clinton filth. I can't stand her. I just can't stand her. But look, I'm going to keep my opinion to myself, as I always do.
As you always do, right?
I always do. I very much want to hear from some of our viewers in terms of who they're voting for and why they're thinking to vote for the people that they will cast their vote for. I have a list of shout-outs. Here you go. Tap Records, Forasage, Agent 04, Emil Malafa, thank you, Emil, Frank Martin Jr., Hollis Lima, DJ Prodigy 909, Deborah Clark Rushing, William Lee, Wilson Tony, The Lone Wolf Effect, Geraldo S., Jack C. 3D, Heats One Fan, Miami Chaos, spelled Kaos, Yvonne Denny, Frank White, Ongen MM, Hedgehog Trill, Aubrey Management, Metro 4387, Nonbeliever, GGG1234-ish, Eddie Bailey, Dwight Bishop, Willa Barnes, Janine Felton, The Real Dill, and Jock Foreman. Thank you, all of you. It's a pleasure to read your comments, even the ones that I agree with. But at least they did not engage in name calling. And in fact, the comments from our segment last week were thoughtful. Mm-hmm. They were thoughtful, and we got more thumbs up than thumbs down. I like that.
That's a new one. That's a new one. Usually we get more thumbs down than thumbs up.
No, we're getting a lot of thumbs up, and I appreciate that. Not one person, called me an ignorant white racist bitch. I appreciate that, but let's see what the group has to say this week. Let's see what the group has to say this week. But I'm curious to know who are they going to vote for? Who are they going to vote for? And I'm curious to understand. If they're going to vote for Hillary, I want to understand why would you do that? And some people commented last week, we'll vote for Hillary because that's the name we know. What a terrible reason to vote for anybody. What a terrible reason. This is not like, going to a restaurant and ordering dinner. You order what you know you like. That's not it. This is more important than that, and it requires a different level of consideration and understanding. Don't you agree?
I agree that people should do what their heart tells them, what their conscience tells them to do. So if your conscience tells you, even if it tells you not to vote, then I support that. I'm not saying that that you're just that you're right or wrong. I'll just say I support people doing whatever their conscience tells them. So when people ask me who I'm voting for, I say I'm not voting for Hillary, I'm not voting for Bernie, I'm not voting for Trump. I am voting for the black community. Period.
Who, if asked, would you endorse?
I don't endorse candidates like that. I never would.
If the black community or a group in the black community came to you and said, Dr. Boyce, we are just bumfuzzled here. We do not know who we should cast our vote for. Who do you think is going to be the best candidate to support the black community and the needs of the black community? Your answer to that?
I would tell them that I refuse to endorse anybody. I'm not, I don't want to be I don't want to be one of Hillary Clinton's little black drones. I don't want to be Bernie Sanders' lawn jockey. He's got a few black guys running around, campaigning for him like they're related
Right.
or something. I'm just not a fan of black people sort of taking up this backup, playing the role of this backup singer for the
Right.
benevolent white person who's going to save us. I'm a big fan of black people taking the lead of our own destiny, whatever that means.
Right.
I even and really, and again, I don't tell people not to vote. I tell people to follow their conscience, and I also tell them that data shows that voting for the Democrats hasn't done much for black people, and I don't think voting for the Republicans would have done much more.
Right.
But if you look at the Asian community, in the Asian community, they don't vote at all. Their voter participation rate is the lowest among any ethnic group, but yet they have the highest achievement in terms of education, and they have the highest incomes of any group, even
It's a
higher
hard.
even higher than the Jewish community. So to me, what this says is
It's a
that
hard.
I'm a one issue voter, like just like your dad. My one issue is the well being of the black community.
Right.
And so, given that politics and presidential elections don't impact the well being of the black community, then I don't care about that very much. It doesn't affect. It's just I don't want to meet with Bernie Sanders. I don't want. I used to a long time ago used to get these calls from the Obama White House, but it wasn't a big deal. They call everybody that they think is an influencer, because they have this black media guy. That they have the media section, then they have the black media section below the media section, right? So the black media guy will call me, and at first I thought, okay, this is great. They want to hear, some ideas and what people are thinking, and they didn't want to hear all that. They wanted a one-way conversation. Well, the president is about to push forward with this initiative for gay rights, and we just want to make sure that you're on board. I'm not gay. Why, why, and they'll say, well, yeah, but we have to support the president because, the racist Republicans are going to try to stop it. Yeah, but I'm not gay. Call the gay community, get them behind this. If you want to talk about black people and black unemployment and the struggles we're having, then you call
Right.
me. But don't call me about something that you guys have going on that has nothing to do with me.
And
Stop it. Just stop it. So I got to the point where, and I think the straw that broke the camel's back for me was Elena Kagan when they tried to nominate Elena Kagan for the Supreme Court successfully.
we've talked about
And yeah, and when they did that, I said I'm done. Don't call me anymore. Because they kept trying to call me because I was going on TV talking, expressing my opinion. And I said, anybody. My belief is always that anybody who tries to block you from ideas and information is usually not your friend. They're trying to get you to support their
oh
agenda.
yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
so if I'm simply if I'm a threat to you because I'm simply telling black people to follow their conscience and use their brains, then you can go to hell. Because there are so many so many people, leaders who depend on black people not using our brains. So that's why I want people to hear from you, because even though your ideas are different, people need to hear everything and then
I think
figure out
so
who you
too.
are.
I think so too. But I think it's important that we do vote. I think that it's important that we vote for the. If you can't vote enthusiastically in support of somebody, I think it's important that you vote for the least of all evils. I do think that's important. I think that that's an important responsibility of all citizens. Um, if we're so convinced that there's not a good candidate in the bunch, then you have to develop other candidates. Moving forward, have another candidate ready to put forward 4 years from now. If this has been such a nightmare, this whole electoral cycle has been sought with. There's not a single candidate, and it's not as though we didn't start out with a whole bunch of good candidates. We started out with how many people were in this arena 6 months ago. There were 20 between the Republicans and the Democrats. There were 20 people to choose from. How is it that this is what we're down to? And if we're all so dissatisfied, and we are, I haven't spoken to hardly anybody who says, well, I'm really enthusiastic about pulling the lever for. They're not.
Maybe
It's,
maybe Trump supporters are, and maybe that's what's helping him, right? I think
I
I
think
think
that's
I think
true.
I think diehard Trump supporters are the only enthusiastic group in this election.
I think
You
that's
know,
true. And they
yeah.
are enthusiastic about
hmm
him. They do see that this is a guy who calls it like it is, and maybe he'll get it done, and he's not going to do the politically correct thing, which we know doesn't work because we've lived with the scholar gentleman for, entirely too long. I don't know. What do you think about Obama's pick for Supreme Court?
You should have picked a black woman.
a black woman.
Because there's never been a black woman on the Supreme Court in the entire history of the United States.
All right, so he picks a Jewish man from Chicago. Did you know he's Jewish?
Another Jewish person?
Yes.
Do you know that Jews have taken a highly disproportionate percentage of seats on the Supreme Court in American history? Did you know that?
If he's confirmed, if Garland is confirmed, he will be the ninth.
Right.
The ninth Jewish Supreme Court justice, but I don't believe he'll be confirmed.
Okay, and what's interesting to me is that the Jewish community comprises 2% of the American population. Black people comprise 13%, but yet there have been 9 Jewish justices on the Supreme Court and 2 African American males, one of whom has worked very hard to undermine the black community, Clarence Thomas. The other, Thurgood Marshall, was a great pick. No African American women. Do you know how many hundreds of thousands of black women there are that are so qualified when it comes to legal expertise? Not hundreds of thousands, but
I don't know hundreds of thousands.
I mean hundreds of thousands of black women who are educated, who are doing great things,
and
who
I'm
are
sure
high
that there are
achievers.
many black women who are already judges who could have been a very good pick. The black community should make it very clear to Obama and to his administration, you're not happy with this pick. You're not happy with this pick. You know, what other option do you have? I don't think that Garland is going to be confirmed, because I think the Republicans are just going to be obstinate about this and not confirm him, even though he certainly seems very qualified.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, there are quite a few people that could be qualified for the court. I think it's I'm not going to say that Obama can't pick who he wants, but
is it quite true that Clarence Thomas has not been good for the black community?
Clarence Thomas is considered to be just one of the greatest black traitors of all time in terms of black people who have served the role. Did you ever see Django Unchained? Did you ever see that movie with Jamie Foxx?
Yes, a few years ago, sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Remember Samuel L. Jackson's character?
Yeah.
That's Clarence Thomas in the minds of a lot of people.
Really?
He's seen as the person who, you see, white supremacy and racism work best when you put a black face on it. So when you get a black person willing to promote an agenda that the majority of black people just don't understand, and it's, he pushes forward with policies that many black people feel are harmful to us. It just becomes very disappointing. I know, for example, even with affirmative action, Clarence Thomas actually benefited from affirmative action. So for him to fight against it is just very strange for people. So again, I can't say that
fighting against affirmative action is because he thinks affirmative action is not a good thing, even though he was a beneficiary. Well, I don't like affirmative action, and I've said this to you before. If I were a black person, the idea that anybody would look at me as, oh, she only got into Princeton because of affirmative action. Oh, my God. I hate that. I hate the idea that affirmative action puts in the minds of people that black people can't compete, or minorities can't compete in a fair fight.
Well, the problem, though, is that if you look at Clarence Thomas, for example, there's a lot to say that without affirmative action, he wouldn't be where he is right now. And so the question is, which would you rather have? Would you rather have the job and have people hate you, which many people don't like black people anyway, or would you rather not have the job and have everyone like you because you didn't even get an opportunity? I mean, that's the thing. People always like you more if you don't fight for what you deserve.
You're making an assumption that the opportunity wouldn't be there for you in the absence of affirmative action.
Before there was affirmative action, those opportunities didn't exist for us. As I mentioned to you about Syracuse University, I was the first black finance professor they'd hired in 100 years. And I wasn't the first smart black guy to apply for that job. So that becomes the dilemma.
Right.
Although I'm not a big... Now, one area where I do jump off the bus with affirmative action is I'm not a big believer that affirmative action is going to create the economic opportunity that black people deserve. I'm a big fan of us starting our own businesses and
absolutely,
and then taking the income we have and supporting those businesses. So a lot of what we discuss in terms of ideas we promote center around the idea of kind of looking at what the Jewish communities do and Asian communities and kind of engaging in I don't want to call it economic protectionism because that's a negative connotation, but basically taking care of yourself and taking care of your
economic independence. And I think it's so important for all groups, for the Black community, for women, for any group that feels that you're not going to get a fair shake in the in the corporate universe, then you start your own. You
Mm-hmm.
start your own. You hire your own because they'll be loyal to you. You build your own, and why shouldn't your own efforts and your own industriousness go towards enriching you and your community? So I'm with you there, boys. I think that we would all do well to take responsibility for our own economic independence, start our own businesses with people who are similar in temperament, similar in aptitude. I absolutely think we should be encouraging all minority groups, and I'm saying women as a minority group in some fashion. Yeah, we should start your own. It doesn't have to be a big business. Start a small business, but work for yourself. Be your own boss. Be responsible for your own success. Be responsible for your own financial independence.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, I think we've covered almost everything today, and
Good.
so it's always a pleasure speaking with you.
Always a pleasure speaking with you. I look forward to all the positive, nice, sweet comments that our viewers are going to leave for us, because they know I read every single one of them. Don't make a face. You should be reading these.
No,
Learn a lot.
I read comments briefly. I'll read a couple, but eventually it starts to irritate you after a while, and I don't want to be irritated. So, but I do appreciate when people do chime in and have important conversations, and
Absolutely.
So I do glance at them every now and then. Well, it's great seeing you again.
And wonderful speaking with you. We'll talk next week.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Well, this is Miss Susan Patton, aka the Princeton Mom. Her book is called Marry Smart, so you should go check out the book, especially if you're ever thinking about getting married or know somebody who is. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and don't forget that we're going to be in Chicago on March 26th, where we're going to premiere our new film, Resurrecting Black Wall Street, The Blueprint. It's going to be an awesome event, 4 hours of just education, information, and all kinds of great stuff for you. So you can check it out and buy tickets at thedrboycewatkinstour.com, thedrboycewatkinstour.com. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.